Welcome to another AP Human Geography topic walkthrough, brought to you by Mr. Michael, Social Studies teacher. This video is here to help you fill out your lecture notes, understand the big ideas, and maybe even laugh once or twice. So grab your notes and let's get started.
Hey, welcome back. All right, picture this. You're walking through a city and you see a Buddhist temple next to a Starbucks across the street from a taco truck. Welcome to the wild mashup that is a cultural landscape. Today, we're diving into how human beliefs, values, and history shape the land around us, from ancient pyramids to gendered hair salons. And yes, we'll be unpacking how everything from rice terraces to Chinatowns tells a deeper story. Let's get into it. Here's what we're locking in today. First, you'll be able to spot a cultural landscape like a pro. We're talking physical features, language, religion, agriculture, and even the vibe of the buildings. Think temples, factories, neon signs, and rice terraces, all showing off a region's personality. Then we're diving into how landscapes reflect deeper beliefs, like gender roles, ethnic traditions, and how people use land and resources. Basically, the way a place looks says a lot about who lives there, what they value, and how they organize their lives. Let's see how culture leaves its fingerprints all over the map. A cultural landscape is basically nature, with a human makeover. It's what happens when people leave their mark on the land, showing off their beliefs, values, and how they live. We're talking everything from how they farm, to what language is on the street signs, to whether buildings look ancient, modern, or like something out of a futuristic K-drama. Now peep those images: Eiffel Tower, Great Wall, Great Pyramids, and Mount Fuji. Which one doesn't belong? Yeah, Mount Fuji is a natural feature, not human-made. Cultural landscapes are all about the human touch, literally. All right, now that we've defined it, let's time travel a bit with a concept called sequent occupancy. Okay, get this. Cultural landscapes aren't built in a day, or even a century. That's where sequent occupancy comes in. The idea that different cultural groups leave their mark on a place over time, like layers in a giant historical lasagna. Check out those images of the Great Pyramids. You've got ancient wonders, modern buildings, and even a fast food joint with a pyramid view. Iconic. That's sequent occupancy in action. Old and new, side by side, shaping how we experience a place today. And trust, most places you visit aren't stuck in one time period. They're remixing history like it's a Spotify playlist. Now let's zoom in on the patterns you can spot in cultural landscapes, starting with ethnicity. Let's zoom in on how culture shapes space, because it's not random where things are or who's living where. Cultural landscapes reflect a society's views on ethnicity and gender, whether it's where women work, how gender roles play out in public spaces, or how ethnic groups cluster in certain neighborhoods. All of that helps shape the layout of cities and communities. And quick reminder, ethnicity is all about shared ancestry and culture, not just how people look. That's what separates it from race, which is based on physical traits. You can actually see these patterns on the map, and even in your local community. Speaking of which, let's check out what ethnic neighborhoods reveal. Here's where ethnicity shows up loud and proud. Ethnic neighborhoods, also called enclaves. These are clusters of people from the same cultural background, usually in major cities. Think of it like dropping into a different country without leaving your city. Look at Chinatown in Chicago. The signs are in Chinese, temples and traditional architecture are everywhere, and the food? Next level. Ethnic neighborhoods like this are stacked with restaurants, markets, and religious buildings that reflect shared culture. But it's not just about dumplings and dragon gates. These spaces often formed as a response to racism and discrimination, and as a way to preserve identity through chain migration. Basically, people followed friends or family to build a community where they felt safe and seen, and these cultural pockets, they're major clues on the landscape. Coming up next, how ethnicity patterns stretch beyond neighborhoods to entire regions. Let's zoom out from neighborhoods and look at the bigger picture. Entire regions of the US show predictable patterns of ethnicity, and these didn't just pop up randomly. They're the result of migration, history, and cultural roots. In the Southwest, you'll see high populations of Latin Americans and Native Americans, a legacy of Spanish colonization and indigenous homelands. The Southeast is home to many African American communities shaped by slavery, the Great Migration, and generations of resilience. And over in the West, large numbers of Asian Americans reflect waves of immigration from across the Pacific. Take a look at the map of Chicago. It's a patchwork of ethnic identity, where neighborhoods are defined by deep historical and cultural ties. Each color tells a story. Let's shift gears now and see how gender roles shape the cultural landscape. Gender plays a major role in shaping the cultural landscape, especially when it comes to the status and visibility of women in society. In many traditional societies, women were expected to stay home, raise children, and leave the workforce to the guys. Education? Business ownership? Not really part of the plan. But as countries develop socially and economically, those roles start to shift. You'll see more women in college, owning property, running businesses, and working outside the home. And guess what? All of that shows up in the landscape. Look around. Are there women's dorms at universities? Female-run shops downtown? Women working in banks, schools, offices? That's the cultural landscape telling a story of change. One policy, protest, and pay raise at a time. These shifts in gender roles don't just change how people live, they literally reshape laws, economies, and who owns what. Take a look at this map. It shows where women have legal and practical access to property rights, and where they don't. Spoiler alert, not all countries are on the equality train just yet. In the green areas, women can own land and property just like men. But in the yellow, orange, and red zones, there are major legal or cultural roadblocks. Some countries have laws that seem equal, but in practice, women still face huge barriers. Others straight up don't allow women to inherit or own land at all. This is a prime example of how gender shows up in the cultural landscape through ownership, access, and control of land and resources. Let's keep going and explore how even public spaces can reflect gender norms. Not all spaces are created equal, especially when it comes to gendered spaces. These are public or private places that reflect or reinforce specific roles for men and women. Take Mexico City, for example. A 2013 study found that only 19% of women felt safe using daily transportation. And sadly, 9 in 10 women reported facing violence in those public spaces. That's not just a statistic, that's a serious cultural issue. To respond, the city introduced women-only buses, like the ones you see in the picture, as an attempt to create safer public transportation. It's a clear example of how gender norms and safety concerns directly shape the landscape around us. To see how deep gender roles run, you don't always need a law or a protest. Sometimes, all it takes is a trip to the hair salon. Let's be real. You can often tell who a space is meant for without anyone saying it out loud. Just look at these two places. On the left, stylish lighting, sleek furniture, and hair products galore. On the right, black and white tile, sports on TV, and zero conditioner in sight. Hair salons and barbershops might serve the same basic function, haircuts, but they're often gendered spaces. They're designed and marketed with either men or women in mind, reflecting different cultural expectations about appearance, behavior, and even conversation. These places don't just shape your look, they reflect the cultural values and norms of gender in that society. Let's shift focus now to land use, and how farming styles can turn mountains into staircases. When it comes to land use, the cultural landscape acts like a giant message board. It tells you what people value, how they survive, and how creative they are with their environment. Take terrace farming, an epic example of humans refusing to let gravity win. In places like South, Southeast, and East Asia, and parts of Latin America, farmers literally carve flat steps into steep mountains so they can grow crops. The most common? Rice, but other crops work too. This practice shows a deep connection to agriculture, a respect for resourcefulness, and a whole lot of engineering skill, all woven into the landscape. Now let's look at a very different kind of land use, one shaped not by farming, but by forced removal and survival. Not all land use is chosen. Some of it is the result of forced displacement. This example highlights how the U.S. government reshaped the cultural landscape through policies aimed at removing indigenous peoples from their ancestral lands. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 led to the Trail of Tears, where Native American communities were pushed out to make room for expanding American settlements. The government then created reservations, marked on the map in orange, where tribes were forced to relocate. These plots of land weren't chosen for cultural significance or sustainability. They were assigned. And yet, indigenous groups adapted, preserved traditions, and made these lands part of their cultural survival. But indigenous land use wasn't only about survival. It also reflects deep values of community and sustainability. Let's take a look at an example from Alaska. In northern Alaska, the cultural landscape tells a very different story, one rooted in tradition, survival, and community values. Indigenous tribes in this region rely on the bowhead whale not just for food, but as a vital part of their cultural identity. Every year, they organize a subsistence whale hunt, where the catch is divided among the community. No waste, no profit, just sustainability and sharing. This tradition reflects collectivism, a deep respect for nature, and the importance of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. From hunting techniques to spiritual rituals, it's all part of the landscape, shaped by culture, not conquest. Now let's flip the script and look at buildings. How architecture reveals what people value, where they live, and what their environment demands. Traditional architecture is where culture meets climate and creativity. These structures aren't designed by famous architects. They're shaped by the environment, local materials, and generations of lived experience. In the Himalayas, homes are built with stone and clay to survive harsh mountain weather. In Mongolia, yurts, portable round tents made from wool and reeds, are perfect for nomadic herders who need to pack up and move with the seasons. And transhumance herders across Europe and Asia use simple huts or cabins while moving livestock. These buildings tell us about lifestyle, mobility, available resources, and the climate challenges people face, all visible in the structures themselves. While traditional architecture reflects survival and simplicity, some landscapes are all about status, innovation, and modern identity. Let's check out postmodern architecture next. On the flip side, postmodern architecture is all about making a statement. These buildings aren't just for shelter, they're flexing cultural identity, economic power, and global ambition. Think skyscrapers. The taller, shinier, and more futuristic looking, the more they scream, "We've got money, tech, and swagger." Just look at Burj Khalifa in Dubai. It's not just the world's tallest building, it's a symbol of the UAE's place in global business and luxury. These designs are bold, diverse, and rooted in popular culture and capitalism. They tell a very different story from the huts and yurts we saw earlier, one of innovation, branding, and global influence. Before we hit you with a big question, let's rewind and pull together everything we've seen across these cultural landscapes. All right, let's hit pause and run it back. We've explored cultural landscapes from every angle: architecture, land use, ethnicity, gender roles, and even how historical layers like sequent occupancy leave lasting marks. From terrace farms in Asia to skyscrapers in Dubai, and from indigenous whale hunts to gendered bus systems, every space tells a story. You're now equipped to read the landscape like a geographer. But can you think like one? Let's find out with one final challenge. Time to flex those APHG skills. Choose one cultural landscape you've seen in this lesson. It could be a terrace farm, a gendered bus, a skyscraper, or even a yurt. Then explain how that landscape reflects both the values and the history of the people who created it. Be specific and connect your answer to at least one of the concepts we covered, like sequent occupancy, gender roles, or ethnicity. Drop your answer in the comments and back it up with examples. And don't forget to add your name for that bonus point, or risk losing it to someone who wrote about Mongolian yurts with passion. Catch you next time, Landscape Legends.